and welcome to Season 2 finale of Touchdown BC. I'm your host, Andrew Wadden. Sure, it's the off-season for university and high school teams, but there is still plenty of football being played across the province of British Columbia. In this month's episode, we'll get you up to date with all the happenings around the BCCFA Flag Championships, including a special interview with coordinator Doug Pauls. I'll get you updated about yet another coaching change for the VI Raiders of the BCFC and which BC-born players were taken in the CFL draft. TDBC's man in the field, Jim Mullen, delivered an outstanding interview with UBC head coach Blake Nill. Nill talks about the latest recruits coming into the T-Birds' nest. And let me tell you, there are some big-time players headed to Point Grey this fall. We'll wrap up the show with part 2 of the Zeke Sandhu interview. If you didn't catch part 1 last month, Zeke is a major player agent for NFL, CFL, and NBA players. You may have heard of Odell Beckham. Of course you've heard of Odell Beckham. Yeah, he's one of Zeke's clients. He's also a local Vancouver boy. That is not to be missed. But before we get to all of that, let's lead off the show at the 5th annual Team BC May Camp that took place over the May long weekend at Minaroo Park in Richmond. The 3-day camp serves as part of the process to select the players that will be representing British Columbia as part of either the provincial under-16 team or the provincial under-18 team. The camp is by invitation only, and it welcomes the top players from across the province. The camp has drawn attention from university recruiters from across the nation, and this year's 3-day camp welcomed a number of visiting schools, including local programs UBC and Simon Fraser University, the University of Calgary, University of Manitoba, University of Saskatchewan, the University of Guelph, Carleton University, Queen's University, the University of Western Ontario, and the University of Waterloo. The camp also featured a controlled scrimmage where we saw some stellar plays from both the U16s and U18s. Here's a look at some of the top highlights from those scrimmages. Thanks to Football BC and the BC Lions, 6 bursaries of $1,000 were awarded to 6 players at the Team BC camp. The money is awarded on the contingency that the athletes continue to work hard in football and successfully join a post-secondary football program after high school. Jim Mullen was at the camp, and earlier he caught up with Dino Jeremiah from Team BC right here in the studio.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Now joined by Dino Jeremiah of Football BC. A very busy weekend for you at the Combine, Dino. Let's first of all talk about the U16 team and what you saw there in terms of that crop of players.
Well, the U16s did a great job coming into camp. A lot of them, it's the first opportunity they've had to work at that level with that kind of competition, with players represented throughout the province. Some really good players, I think specifically on defense at the linebacker spot. There were some very strong players, and with the receivers as well. Great to have the coaches. I think that's one of the things that we've tried to do with our provincial camp is make sure that the coaching is second to none. So having a guy like Sean Olsen run the offense and guys like Nick Kawaza coming back to work with him, Pete McCall from up in the interior, just some good quality coaches that can really break down, and you see the improvements through the weekend with those U16s.
With some of the players that come in at this age and at this level, how is their coaching level up until that point? and what are the extra things that they can learn that they can bring back to their teams?
Well, it's diverse throughout the province, but a lot of times what happens with clubs or teams, high schools, they don't get the position-specific work because there's 1, 2, 3, 4 coaches, so they don't get it broken down, whereas in our provincial camps, there's 2 coaches at every position. So they're getting the drills, they're getting the feedback, they're getting the opportunity to work through skills and techniques with fundamentals and getting that feedback that helps them improve. I think that's the biggest difference, and it's just the nature of the beast because there's, most programs are just short of coaches, especially at the younger ages, so you have a staff of 3 that's trying to coach all the positions.
What about the U18 team? What did you like there?
I think there was a great group of talent all throughout. When I talked to the coaches after the weekend, they thought, holy smokes, this was a much more talented group than I thought. Couple of position groups that stood out were the receivers with Gavin Cobb and Parker Simpson, 2 really outstanding players. Both of them won a scholarship award that we had provided with the BC Lions with cooperation from them. So that was one group that specifically stood out. I thought that both O-line and D-line were strong, not necessarily deep, but strong with the starting 5 or 6 on both sides of the ball.
Now, in terms of some of the coaches that came out to watch this event from CIS schools and NCAA schools, of course, from the NCAA side, you had Simon Fraser there. They could only observe because of the way the rules work on the NCAA side. Of course, Blake Nill was there with the UBC Thunderbirds, but a few new schools along the sidelines I noticed. Queens, Pat Sheehan was there. Chris Bertoya was there representing Waterloo. This is the first time I've seen Waterloo out of Central Canada in terms of scouting. Certainly, it's drawing the attention of schools from across the country, isn't it? Yeah,
I think the unique part about it is that they can interact with the players. They get an opportunity to watch them practice. They see them in 5 practices. The weekend has 5 practices and a scrimmage, so a more competitive scrimmage. So the coaches enjoy that part of it, sitting with them at dinner, seeing them first thing in the morning, because most of them are staying at the hotel with the players. So it's a very unique recruiting experience that we're able to provide. And I always tell the players, there's so many different things going on out there. There's nothing more valuable than having that CIS coach or that NCAA coach at your practice, watching you, and then being able to talk to you after the practice. That's the most valuable thing. That's when you have an opportunity to sell yourself.
Talk to me about the recruiting nights. The CIS coaches have an opportunity to go up there, make a pitch to the players, and the players and families also have the opportunity to ask questions and provide feedback. How valuable is that for everyone involved in the process?
The message sent from the universities is somewhat similar, education. You got to work hard on the field, work hard with your fundamentals, your skills. So that message gets sent in different ways. Some universities use a video, some just stand up and are very good speakers, but there's that message sent, and it's so invaluable to the players to keep hearing that from those university coaches. So once they've given the presentation, each university has an opportunity to do their presentation, like I said, with a video, or they're just speaking, or PowerPoints, etc. Then the Sunday night is really informal, and they get an opportunity to just hang out. So the players, the U18 players, are hanging out in the banquet hall with the CIS coaches and our U18 coaches, and they just have an opportunity to discuss and get to know each other. And the parents are there, meeting the coaches as well. And it's like I said to a few of the parents that were asking me, there's nothing more valuable than you having the opportunity to meet with the coaches and them selling your program and you saying, hey, this is an opportunity I'd like to take advantage of.
What's next for the U16 team and the U18 team?
Both U16 and U18 teams are planned to be playing south of the border in Auburn as part of the Tanoa Classic. The date for U16 has not been set yet. U18 will be during the Christmas break at some point. They haven't set the exact schedule yet, but it should be sometime between Christmas and New Year's that tournament takes place.
Now we're rolling up on junior football season across the province in the BCFC. What else is going on in the world of football BC and amateur football as we head into the summer? What should we be made aware of?
I think there's a big push across the country to make sure that the coaches are safe contact trained. So we'll continue to do that with our clinics, practices with the players to ensure that, again, we're sending that message across the country. And obviously Football BC, we're trying to be out there and being proactive as often as we can in practices. I'll be out in the North Shore tomorrow night. I'm out in the Valley next week. So we're constantly trying to get out there, making sure we sell that safe contact piece. Our grade 8 team and our U13 team are going to be going up to the Legacy Games in Kamloops in July 23rd to 26th, and competing in a training camp environment and then a game at the end of the games.
Dino, thanks very much for this. Always appreciate it. And back to you, Andrew.
Well, at the Team BC camp, our man Jim Mullen, a.k.a. the hardest working man in amateur football, caught up with UBC head coach Blake Nill. Like the other CIS coaches in attendance at the camp, Nill was in search of future recruits for his program. He also dropped a bomb about some prime-time recruits that will be donning the new blue and gold uniforms this fall at Point Grey. Take a look.
First of all, Blake, I still see that you do not have the royal blue on. What is the deal with that?
We're waiting for the Adidas shipment to come in, Jim. You know, the Under Armour era is gone. The Adidas stuff is on its way. Once that package starts coming in, you'll see me in royal blue.
And I understand you're going with a uniform change as well. There will be a BC on the helmets. You're going back to the gold numbers.
Yeah, a little bit, you know, a little bit of tradition. Bring back a little, just a change of pace. You know, the BC, the Block Club, all that tradition that has been such a big part of UBC history. I just want to acknowledge that and maybe generate a little enthusiasm from people who have played 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Now, recruiting hasn't stopped for you. I know the recruiting pool's kind of dried up across the nation, but you keep going at it. Troy Hansen is the latest. Tell me the story about him.
Well, you know, Troy was a kid that an Edmonton native who I've been recruiting for 3 years now. You know, decided to go and do the prep school experience. Was touted as going to University of California. Things changed there. Ended up signing, I believe, at North Dakota State. And he called me one day and he just said, Coach, you know, I think I'd, you know, like to look at UBC now. And we were able to bring him down. He enjoyed his experience there. I had a pass with him. So he's a great addition to the program, a very large, you know, tall, 6'4", 220-pound interior linebacker with a mean streak and something that's going to add to our culture at UBC.
Taylor Loeffler's also an addition for you guys out of Boise State. Many people will remember him from Kelowna in 2010, BC High School Player of the Year. Had many problems with injuries, though, 2 ACL injuries. He only really had 1 complete season, which he was very impressive on special teams, and a pretty good defensive back as well. Tell me about him, and tell me about his state of health.
Well, Taylor, as you mentioned, was Player of the Year in this province. Another large, lanky athlete. You know, a kid. He's 6'3", 220. He was a strong safety for Boise State. Another athlete who I had some brief history with, trying to recruit him back in the USC day. The thing with Taylor is that he had those ACL injuries. He's had 1.5 years off now. He feels he's completely rehabbed, said he's moving better than ever, wants an opportunity to get to the CFL, approached me saying, you know, with my background in getting kids drafted and that, he, you know, asked me if I thought I could put him in a position to showcase him. We're more than, you know, happy to oblige that. He'll provide a bit of a bridge until our young kids can get to the level we need him. And this is a young man who BC people should be very happy to see in their backyard now again, and I think is going to make a big difference to the culture of UBC football.
You went to Toronto looking for a receiver. You come back with Travell Pinto. I believe he was the MVP for Team Canada in one of the international bowl games. Tell me a little bit about him.
Well, I'm very happy about that. That's our latest signing. You know, I just last Wednesday I took a 5-hour trip to Toronto, met for 2 hours, 5-hour trip back. What Travell gives us is a young man who can stretch the defense, a very good route runner. You know, we need to bring in the athletes to basically parallel Michael O'Connor. You know, we've got a quarterback who can make all the throws. We need to make sure we've got guys who can run those routes and be effective as athletes who, you know, after they catch the ball. The yak yards are so important. Travell is a great one-on-one player, very difficult to bring down when he has the football.
You've got some great frontline players in your receiving core in terms of Davis, in terms of Morrison, in terms of Pinto. There's a couple of others in there too, but I would think that depth is your biggest concern coming out of spring camp.
Right now, Jim, after spring camp, I feel I have the offensive line to win football games, the defensive line to win football games. Linebackers are positive for us. The running backs are positive. Michael O'Connor and Casey Kidd should give us the talent we need at quarterback. And you're right, though. We have a lack of depth at receiver and in the secondary, and those are my two focal points right now.
How's the Terrell Davis experiment going at linebacker?
Very good. The thing with Terrell is people don't, you know, I don't know if they knew this, but Terrell was a very effective linebacker coming out of Mount Doug. A young man who, the biggest thing, Jim, is he understands what it takes to win in the game of football. You know, you could work him very tough. He's never going to complain. He's just going to focus on getting the job done, do what it takes. Both him and Marcus are tremendous young men, are great ambassadors to the Mount Doug program, to the city of Victoria, and we need both of them to be foundations for the building of UBC.
The 2015 CFL Draft is in the books, and a few BC-born players were selected over the 7-round event, including Suk Chung from Port Coquitlam, who was taken 2nd overall by the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Chung joins former SFU O-lineman and last year's 2nd overall pick, Matthias Goosen, on the Bombers' offensive line. Here's a look at the other local products who are now headed to the pros. Some BCFC news now. The coaching carousel continues to turn with the VI Raiders. Gone before he even coached a game with the team is Jeremy Kahn. In is defensive coordinator Jerome Erdman. Kahn stepped down due to health concerns, so in steps Erdman, who is now the Raiders' 3rd coach in less than a year. It's his first crack at a head coaching position. The BCCFA Flag Championships take place in late May and in early June, with the U19 Championship taking place on May 31st at Burnaby Lakes in Burnaby. The U10, 12, 14, and 16 championships take place on June 6th and 7th at the Capitol News Center in Kelowna. Jim Mullen, of course, he's everywhere, caught up with BCCFA coordinator Doug Pauls and delivered once again a fantastic interview.
So, Doug, give us an overview of what flag football in BC is all about. What are the ages? What are the participation rates like? How is it a great point of engagement for people to play the game the very first time?
Sure. Okay, so spring flag football in British Columbia has been going on for multiple years now. Started back in 2007 under the initiative of Football Canada via a grant from NFL Rush. And started initially here in the Lower Mainland with 7 teams, 80 kids, a couple of little tournaments, very low key, head up to Kelowna. And the big emphasis at that point was being able to play in a national championship. So a group of individuals flew off to Prince Edward Island and had a great experience, got their butts kicked. They ended up finishing 8th out of 9 teams, but they came back, had a great experience. From there, it continued to grow, and our numbers have gone from 200 to 400 to 600. Last year, we were at 1,200 for the province, and this year we're well over probably 2,000, close to 2,200 by the time numbers come together. And what we've really seen is parents buying into, love football, love the game, but there are some concerns in terms of the contact concussion aspect of it. And I think with the safe tackling that we're really doing a good job with that. But it does give that parent that wants to introduce their child to the sport an opportunity to come, touch, catch the ball, and have a great experience. In terms of who participates, we want to mirror this off of the community football model, and so we're going with the Adam level player, which is the U10, and then we continue up U12, 14, 16, and we have a U19 division, and the kids play, and it's the same group of young men that are going to, or ladies that are going to play in the fall. They can use this quarterbacks, receivers, coverage for the group of kids that are going to be participating. So I've seen a significant enhancement in throwing, catching at the youth levels, which has been really encouraging. I think our skill level is definitely improving, and the compete level, I think internationally, that can be seen as well.
Especially for the younger kids that are getting involved with the game for the first time. Everybody wants to touch the ball. Everybody wants to be a quarterback or a receiver or running back or something like that. Is that one of the big upsides to the flag game?
Absolutely, especially at the U10, 12, and 14 age. One of my directives with the coaches is every player gets a chance to be the quarterback during the course of the season. Every player touches the ball. Everybody's rotating through. So we're very much in a participatory model for that, and that's definitely enhanced growth. The other thing that's outstanding with this is compete movement. And what I mean by that is we get the athlete that maybe is a little bit of the larger individual, maybe a little more sedentary, but all of a sudden, instead of having him run around the track or have to run sprints with the direction and blowing the whistle and having to be, fairly hard-nosed, they're competing and they just want to put their very best up because they want to support their teammates. So you see little guys that maybe are a little heavier that end up bursting, and you can see a lot more activity. So I'm very encouraged in that aspect of it in terms of movement, activity, energy levels for all ages, including larger and smaller type bodies.
You've seen the program go from year to year. What's the retention rate been like? Because if kids are going out there and getting involved in the game in terms of being able to touch the ball and throw the ball and catch the ball, I have to think the retention rate is pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that the majority of the kids are kids that are playing fall tackle and working on skill enhancement, but there definitely is a percentage, I would estimate in the 10 to 20% range, that are trying the sport out for the very first time. And from there, I would say at least 50% or more are continuing on in terms of the tackle football program in the fall.
Great, Doug. Thanks very much for this.
Thanks so much.
When we come back, you'll get to hear what it's like to be an NFL sports agent to some of the game's biggest stars. Vancouver's version of Ari Gold is coming up right here on Touchdown BC.
Crown Produce secures produce locally and from around the world for Canadian retailers. Crown Produce is also proud to secure sponsorship of University football on Shaw. Crown Produce, supporting Canadian retailers and Canadian amateur football.
Hey, welcome back. Glad to see you returned. It must have been that Entourage reference I dropped earlier. As I mentioned before the break, we have part 2 of an interview with a local Vancouver product who's an agent to some of the NFL, CFL, and NBA's top players. His name is Zeke Sandhu, and let me tell you, he's a beauty. Zeke played football at John Oliver High School before going on to play in the CIS at the University of Manitoba. BC Lions broadcaster Julio Caravata sat down with him during the Provincial Football Conference a few months back. This is part 2 of what was an in-depth discussion. Not going to give anything away. Let's just get right into it.
How do you go through that process of selling the guys that you have?
It's a great question, because every time you go in a home, parents always want to say, how are you going to market my son? Like it's used car sales or something, because there's a lot of used car salesmen that come in. We're going to hand out these flyers and we're going to do this. You guys are all football coaches, so you're going to appreciate and understand this. If I'm calling you about a player, no matter what our relationship is, I'm going to say, here's a kid, I got a kid for you, he's a receiver, you need to sign him, you need to, whatever you can provide for him, he needs to start. You can say, hey, Zeke, that all sounds good. You have any film on him? Hey, Zeke, any production, anything you can tell us football related? People are going to make football decisions based off. Nobody in the NFL is going to risk their careers for a friendship. I think our success stories was last year. Odell Beckham's, one of his good friends, James Wright Jr., was a receiver at LSU. He said, Zeke, will you represent James? I've watched some of James' film from past. I say he's a good player, but last year, he didn't get to play a snap. He didn't play one offensive snap and didn't even catch one ball his senior year because Coach Cameron, the offensive coordinator, just played Odell and Jarvis, and that was it. We brought him to Arizona, did the same kind of training, preparation, everything. He didn't get invited to the combine. He went to the pro day and killed the pro day. Came in at 6'2", 210 pounds, ran a 4.42 electronic time, killed the drills. Now we're going through the draft process. And teams are telling me, we're going through the draft, you're getting calls during the draft. Sometimes teams will call you in the 4th, 5th round. They're trying to position really for free agency. I had a team call me and say, Zeke, you know, we really want him. I said, then really draft him, right? It's that simple. If you want him, draft him. Because then it makes my job easier. Zeke, how can we draft a guy that didn't even catch a ball, or I don't have that kind of juice to make that call? I said, let's be honest. If you're drafting in the NFL draft from round 4 to 7, and you're drafting a receiver, you're not drafting the number 1 or number 2 or number 3 receiver for your team. Because if you're drafting the top 3 rounds, that guy you think can come in and be the number 1, 2, or 3. If you're drafting from 4 to 7 or even free agent, that guy is going to be the 4th, 5th, 6th receiver on your depth chart. Every one of those receivers has to be able to play special teams. If you can't play special teams, no matter how many yards you had in college, you're not going to make an NFL roster because you're wasting a spot. You might have a guy with a little more talent coming in, but more of a headache, and then you got a kid who may not be as talented, but you'd rather keep him because you know what you're getting, right? But if the guys understand, I always say there's no difference. It's my job as an agent to provide them with every avenue to succeed. So if you've been out of football, I had a conversation with a kid the other day. I said, we want to have a backup plan. Would you consider playing the CFL? I said, think about it, talk it over. He just got married, talk it over with your wife. I said, my job is to give you every opportunity to continue your career, right? As agents, we're not going to make money. But it's still my job as I sign him to give him any path to make it back to where he needs to get to. It's no different than all our career paths. All our career paths, we may want to coach for the BC Lions or Seattle Seahawks, but at the beginning, we have to build a resume.
Did you see Jerry Maguire?
Yeah, long time ago. I think I was in high school.
What, is it anything like that? The life you lead, is it anything like that? Like come NFL draft day, is it, or the leading up to the draft, is it what they show, or is it a little bit?
You know, like Hollywood? The movie Draft Day? Did you guys watch Draft Day? Draft Day had a little more of a similarity, but as agents, you can only, I always tell guys, just like anything in our lives, control what we can control. Make sure we're killing the process. If we do everything we have to come draft day, you don't worry about the end result because you can't control it. Mm-hmm. Nobody knows what's going to happen come draft day. We can all probably guess the top 3 picks, but other than that, we don't know what's going to happen.
All right, that's it. We're wrapping up season number 2 of Touchdown BC from here in the Crown Countdown U studio. We want to thank everyone that helped us give you all the local football information you needed over this past season. Thanks to the good people, of course, at Crown Countdown U, Shaw TV, and more importantly, you, the viewer, for tuning in each and every episode. For Jim Mullen earlier in the show, I'm Andrew Wadden. Enjoy your summer.